Today we're going to start working with solving addition and subtraction equations. And as we're working our way through these, there are two kind of rules that you need to keep in mind. Number one is that we are going to use inverse operations. Inverse means opposite. So the opposite of addition would be subtraction. The opposite of subtraction would be addition. And the way that you isolate a variable or get a variable alone is by using inverse operations. The second thing that we need to keep in mind is that you have to keep your equation balanced. In order to keep an equation true, whatever you do to the left side of the equation, you must also do to the right side of the equation. So if you're adding something to the left side, you must add something to the right side. The exact same thing, not just a random thing. Let's look at an example to get started. So when I talk about the left side and the right side of an equation, what I'm talking about is using the equal sign as a divider. So this y plus 6 would be the left side of the equation, and 15 would be the right side of the equation. So if I'm adding something to this left side, I have to add it to the right. If I'm subtracting something from the left side, I have to subtract that same amount from the right in order to keep this as a true statement. So the first thing that I'm going to do, and this is the way that I want you to show your work, because next week when we move into two-step equations, you're going to have to stay organized, and showing your work this way keeps you organized. We have this unknown value of y that's being added to 6. And that sum, that total, equals 15. So in order to isolate the variable, to get y alone, I have to subtract 6 from it. So underneath where it says add 6, I'm going to put subtract 6. But if I subtract 6 from the left side, I also have to subtract 6 from the y side. So what happens here, when we have 6 and negative 6, we end up with y plus 0, it would be equal to 15 minus 6, which is 9. We don't have to write that y plus 0. We can leave that off because it has no value. It means nothing. And we end up with y is equal to 9. Now, this step right here with writing that plus 0, we're going to leave that off on subsequent problems. Let's look at another one. Here we've got n plus 23 is equal to negative 14. Well, in order to isolate this letter n, to get it by itself so that we know what it's worth, we have to, instead of add 23, we have to subtract 23 from both sides of the equation. Because whatever we do to the left, we do to the right. So when you have 23 and negative 23, that's going to give us our 0. And then we end up with negative 14 minus 23. So you might have to go back and use that integer work that we've worked with before. So 14 points to the negative team, 23 points to the negative team. Positive team has nothing, so we know that the negative team is going to win. And then when I put this together, I end up with the negative team has 37 points more than the positive team. So n is worth negative 37. Remember yesterday when on our POD we did some more work with integers as a refresher? It's to prepare us for today. All right, so now let's look at a subtraction equation. Here we have a minus 12 is equal to 28. In order to solve this one, I'm going to have to still use the opposite operation. The opposite of subtraction is addition, and I have to make sure that I keep my equation balanced. Whatever I do to the left, I also need to do to the right. So here, instead of subtracting 12, I'm going to add 12 in order to isolate that a. So I'm going to add 12 to both sides of my equation. And that subtracting 12, a negative 12 and a positive 12 gives me 0. So that leaves me with just a on the left side. And then here I have 28 plus 12, which is 40. So in this case, a is equal to 40. One more situation. Z minus 24 is equal to negative 9. So instead of subtracting 24, I'm going to add 24 to both sides of the equation. This leaves me with just Z on the left side, and then I have a -9 and a +24. -9, +24. The positive team is going to win, and then we need to see by how many points they're going to win. So 24 minus 9 would be 15. So Z would equal 15. You are turning in your work today. You need to make sure that you show me these steps. I should see these lines of work for every problem.